10.2, talking about global competition. So our standards that we want to meet in this section are to describe free trade and indicate who benefits and who does not benefit from free trade. So let's talk about protectionism and free trade. In the global marketplace, countries benefit from buying one another's products. Countries compete by making the same products. We talked about before, the United States, Japan, and Germany all specialize in making cars and are major competitors in that market. China, the Ukraine, and the United States are major producers of steel. Global competition often leads to trade disputes, which occur when nations put barriers on trading particular items with another country. For example, suppose the United States decides that no Chinese-made steel can be imported into the country. The Chinese may respond by not allowing any more U.S. cars to be imported into China. At the heart of most trade disputes is whether there should be limits on trade or whether trade should be unrestricted. Protectionism and free trade are two opposing points of view that are involved in the trade disputes. Protectionism is the practice of the government putting limits on foreign trade to protect businesses at home. Many companies want to sell what they produce at home. They often want to keep out foreign competitors. For example, rice farming and auto production are two major contributors to the Japanese economy. To limit competition from other countries, Japan practices protectionism in these segments. Some countries also do not want to share what they produce with other countries. So some reasons to restrict trade include foreign competition can lower the demand for products made at home. Companies at home need to be protected from unfair foreign competition. Industry that makes products related to national defense, such as satellites, aircraft, and weapons, need to be protected. The use of cheap labor in other countries can lower wages or threaten jobs at home. A country can become too dependent on another company for important products such as oil, steel, and grain. And other countries might not have the same environmental or human rights standards that we are used to. Trade barriers talk about to limit competition from other countries, governments develop trade barriers. For example, the United States and Brazil both produce sugar, but Brazil can sell it for less than the United States can. The U.S. government can protect U.S. sugar growers in three different ways, with either a tariff, a quota, or an embargo. A tariff is a tax placed on imports to increase their price in the domestic market. By placing a tax on sugar from Brazil, the United States can make it more expensive than American sugar. A quota is a limit placed on the quantities of a product that can be imported. If the United States allows only a small amount of Brazilian sugar into the country, most Americans have to buy American sugar. Also, by lowering the supply, you drive up the demand, which means you would increase the price of the Brazilian sugar as well. And lastly, an embargo is a ban on the import or export of a product. Embargoes are pretty rare and are usually only used against another country for political or military reasons. The U.S. has a pretty famous trade embargo with Cuba because of dating back to the 1960s with their communist practices. Free trade. So economic or foreign policy often determines which countries trade with each other. Free trade occurs when there are few or no limits on trade between countries. Supporters of free trade think all countries should be free to compete anywhere in the world without restrictions. Free trade offers several benefits. It opens up new markets in other countries. There are more than 298 million people in the United States, but more than 6 billion people worldwide. It creates new jobs, especially in areas related to global trade, such as shipping, banking, or communications. Competition forces businesses to become more efficient and productive. Consumers have more choice in the variety, prices, and quality of products. It promotes cultural understanding and encourages countries to cooperate with each other. And lastly, it helps countries raise their standard of living. As the world economy becomes more global, many countries are moving toward a free trade system. To reduce limits on trade, nations form trade alliances. In a trade alliance, several countries merge their economies into one huge market. For example, NAFTA, which stands for the North American Free Trade Agreement, combined the economies of the United States, Canada, and Mexico. As a result, it is easier for the United States to buy oil from Mexico and to sell its cars there. Free trade is good in general, but it's not without some problems. Some people oppose NAFTA because they feared some workers would be displaced when trade barriers were lowered. Opponents predicted that some high-paid U.S. jobs would be lost to Mexico. That did happen in areas where Americans and Mexicans were competing. Those in favor of NAFTA predicted that trade among all three nations would increase dramatically, stimulating growth and bringing a wider variety of lower-cost goods to consumers. Indeed, that has occurred since the passage of NAFTA. Despite the early controversy over NAFTA, the alliance has resulted in various business projects between the three countries. Some of the major trade alliances in the world are the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, again between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Then we have the European Union, more familiarly known as EU, and this is Austria, Belgium, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, the Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Pretty much every country in Europe is in the European Union. And then lastly, it's mentioned the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, so ASEAN. And this would be the countries of Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. This concludes Chapter 10 on the global economy.